I thought I knew every detail of my husband's life. 6 years of marriage should mean something, right? But as I turned onto the gravel path leading to Brett's family lake house that Friday afternoon, I had no idea I was about to discover just how little I actually knew. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall pine trees lining the narrow road. I had packed Brett's favorite meal in insulated containers: garlic butter lobster tails, truffle mashed potatoes, and the chocolate lava cakes he always ordered at fancy restaurants. My trunk also held an overnight bag with the red silk nightgown he bought me last Christmas, still with tags on. I'd been planning this surprise for 2 weeks. Brett had been taking these fishing trips every month for the past year and a half. He always came back relaxed but distant, smelling like lake water and pine. He'd kiss my forehead, shower, and fall into bed. I told myself he needed these breaks from his demanding tech investment firm. He worked 80-hour weeks, closing deals worth hundreds of millions. He deserved time to unwind. But lately something felt different. He'd started password protecting his phone. He'd stopped inviting me to business dinners. And last month I'd found a receipt for jewelry I never received. When I asked about it, he said it was for a client's wife. I believed him because that's what wives do, right? We trust. The lake house came into view, a sprawling cedar structure with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. Brett's black Range Rover was parked in the driveway, just as expected. But beside it sat a white Mercedes convertible I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened slightly, but I pushed the feeling away. Maybe he'd invited a business friend. Maybe it was a coincidence. I grabbed the food containers and walked toward the front door. The house sat quiet, too quiet. Usually, Brett would have music playing or the television on. I reached for my keys but decided to knock first, not wanting to startle him if he had company. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. That's when I heard it. A woman's laugh, light and carefree, coming from the deck that wrapped around to the back of the house. My heart started pounding, but my feet moved forward anyway, carrying me along the stone path that led to the rear of the property. I should have announced myself. I should have called out. But something made me stay quiet, made me peer around the corner of the house before making my presence known. And there they were. Brett sat in one of the oversized deck chairs, his fishing gear abandoned against the railing. A woman with long blonde hair sat on his lap, her arms draped around his neck. She wore a blue sundress that matched the lake behind them. They were talking softly, intimately, and I watched as Brett tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear with the same gentle gesture he used to do with me. The food containers slipped from my hands, but somehow I caught them before they hit the ground. The sound made me freeze, but they didn't hear it. They were too absorbed in each other. "I wish you'd just tell her," the woman said. Her voice carried across the deck clearly. "I hate sneaking around like this, Brett." My husband sighed, his hands resting comfortably on her waist like they belonged there. "Candace, we've talked about this. Naomi would take everything in the divorce. Her lawyer would destroy me. Just give me more time to figure this out." The world tilted sideways. They were discussing me, planning around me. And this woman, this Candace, knew my name. "You've been saying that for months," Candace continued, playing with the collar of his shirt. "I'm not getting any younger. We've been together for over a year now. Over a year." The words echoed in my skull. 18 months of fishing trips. 18 months of elaborate lies. 18 months of me being the fool who packed his bags and kissed him goodbye. I should have stormed onto that deck. I should have thrown the lobster tails at his head and demanded answers. But watching them together, seeing how natural they looked, how comfortable he was with his hands on her body, I realized something crucial. I needed evidence. I needed documentation. And most importantly, I needed a plan. My phone was in my jacket pocket. Moving as quietly as possible, I took it out and started taking photos. Click. Brett kissing her neck. Click. His hands sliding up her back. Click. Her laughing at something he whispered. I took at least 20 photos from different angles, making sure their faces were clear, making sure the lake house was visible in the background. Then I recorded a video. 3 full minutes of them talking about their relationship, about how long they'd been together, about their future plans. Brett mentioned looking at properties for them in the Bahamas. Candace talked about how she couldn't wait to stop hiding. My hands shook as I held the phone, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed this. All of it. When I had enough evidence to bury him, I backed away slowly. I made it to my car without them hearing me, loaded the food containers into the back seat, and sat behind the wheel staring at nothing. The drive home took 3 hours, but I don't remember most of it. My mind kept replaying the scene on the deck. The easy way they touched each other. The familiarity between them. The life they were planning without me in it. I thought about all the times I'd defended Brett to my friends who said he worked too much. All the lonely nights I'd spent convincing myself our marriage was strong, that we were just going through a busy phase. All the times I'd looked at our wedding photos and felt grateful to have married someone successful and ambitious. What a complete fool I'd been. By the time I pulled into our driveway in the city, darkness had fallen. Our house, a modern 3-story brownstone in an exclusive neighborhood, looked like something from a magazine. I designed every room myself, choosing furniture and colors that I thought reflected both of us. Now I looked at it and saw nothing but a pretty cage I'd been living in. I walked inside and went straight to our home office. Brett's laptop sat on the desk, password protected as always now. But I knew he kept paper files in the bottom drawer, the ones he thought I never looked at. I pulled out folders and started photographing everything. Bank statements, business documents, tax returns, property deeds. Whatever information I could find, I documented. Then I checked our credit card statements going back 2 years. There it was, a pattern I'd been too trusting to notice before. Hotel charges in cities where Brett had supposedly been at business conferences. Jewelry purchases every few months. Restaurant bills for 2 at places I'd never been. Florist charges on random Tuesdays. The evidence of his double life was everywhere. I'd just been too naive to see it. I transferred all the photos and videos from my phone to a secure cloud account. Then I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys. Not just any attorneys, but the ones who specialized in high net worth divorces. The ones who had reputations for destroying cheating spouses in court. It was 2 a.m. when I finally stopped. I had a list of lawyers to contact. I had evidence backed up in 3 separate locations. And I had something else, something that surprised me. I had clarity. This marriage was over. But I wasn't going to just walk away with nothing while Brett rode off into the sunset with his mistress. If he wanted out, he was going to pay for it. He was going to pay for every lie, every fishing trip, every moment he'd made me feel like I was imagining things when I questioned his stories. I went upstairs to our bedroom and looked at the king-sized bed we'd shared for 6 years. Tomorrow night, Brett would come home from his weekend trip, kiss my forehead and pretend everything was fine. And I was going to let him because I needed time to build my case. But things were never going to be fine again. Our marriage had ended the moment I saw him with Candace on that deck. He just didn't know it yet. I grabbed my pillow and went to sleep in the guest room. I couldn't bear to lie in that bed alone anymore, waiting for a husband who'd rather be anywhere but home. As I lay there in the dark, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The anxiety I'd been carrying for months, the constant worry that something was wrong, the nagging feeling that I was losing my husband's attention, all of it finally made sense now. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid or needy. I was being betrayed systematically and deliberately by the man who'd promised to love me forever. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. He thought I was the sweet, trusting wife who'd never question him, never fight back, never see through his lies. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Saturday morning came with bright sunshine that felt offensive given the circumstances. I woke up in the guest room with my clothes still on, my neck stiff from crying into an unfamiliar pillow. For about 3 seconds I thought maybe yesterday had been a nightmare. Then I reached for my phone and saw the photos still saved there, and reality crashed back down. Brett wouldn't be home until Sunday evening. That gave me 36 hours to get myself together and figure out my next steps. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen island with my laptop. The research I'd done last night seemed surreal in daylight, but I opened the list of divorce attorneys I'd compiled and started making notes. Leonard Hayes kept appearing at the top of every best divorce lawyer's search. He'd represented 3 celebrity wives in the past year alone, all of whom had walked away with massive settlements. His office didn't open until Monday, but I composed an email anyway, marking it urgent. I kept it brief. My billionaire husband is having an affair. I have extensive documentation. I need the best representation available for a high net worth divorce. Please contact me Monday morning. Before I could second guess myself, I hit send. Then I turned my attention to our finances. Brett had always handled the money, saying I shouldn't worry about it. He gave me access to 1 credit card and a checking account with monthly deposits. I'd never questioned it because there was always enough for whatever I needed. Now I realized that enough might have been a tiny fraction of what we actually had. I logged into our primary bank account using Brett's laptop. I'd watched him type the password enough times to memorize it. Fisher 2019, the year he'd bought the lake house. The irony wasn't lost on me that he'd been using the affair location as his password. The account balance made me physically gasp. $843,000 just sitting there. And this was supposedly our household account. I started clicking through statements, my coffee growing cold beside me. Brett moved money constantly. 50,000 here, 100,000 there, always transferring funds between accounts. Some of the account numbers I recognized from documents in his office. Others were completely unfamiliar. Then I found something interesting. Every month, $25,000 moved from our joint account into something labeled Grant Property Holdings LLC. I'd never heard of it. I searched for the LLC online and found it registered in Delaware 2 years ago. The registered agent was a law firm I didn't recognize. No information about what properties it held or what it actually did. $25,000 a month for 2 years. That was $600,000 I knew nothing about. I kept digging. There were quarterly transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands. Annual payments to something called Clearwater Investments. Monthly charges to a property management company in the Bahamas. Brett hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been systematically hiding assets. My phone rang, making me jump. Simone's name flashed on the screen. My best friend always had perfect timing. "Please tell me you're free for brunch," she said without preamble. "I just found out Todd has been using my credit card to buy cryptocurrency without telling me, and I need to vent." Any other day, I would have listened sympathetically to Simone's boyfriend drama. Today, I needed her for something else. "Come over," I said. "Bring bagels. I have a lot to tell you." "That tone," Simone said slowly. "That's your serious tone. What happened?" "Just come over. Please." She arrived 40 minutes later with bagels, cream cheese, and 2 large coffees from my favorite cafe. Simone Taylor had been my best friend since college, the only person who'd known me before I became Brett Grant's wife. She was a freelance graphic designer with bright green eyes and box braids. She changed colors every month. Currently they were deep purple. She took one look at my face and set everything down on the counter. "Okay, tell me." So I did. I showed her the photos from the lake house. I played the video. I showed her the financial documents I'd been reviewing. And then I told her about my plan to hire Leonard Hayes and take Brett for everything I could get. Simone sat quietly through the whole thing, which was unusual for her. She was typically full of commentary and opinions. But she just listened, her expression growing harder with each revelation. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I never liked him." I blinked. "What?" "Brett. I never liked him. I tried to, for your sake. But he always seemed." She struggled for the word. "Calculating. Like everything was a transaction. Even the way he talked about you felt transactional. Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened?" She looked at me pointedly. "You were so in love. And he made you happy, at least at first. I wasn't going to ruin that because of a feeling. I just hoped I was wrong about him." I felt tears threatening but pushed them back. I'd cried enough. I need to be smart about this. I can't just leave. I need to plan. "What do you need from me?" Simone asked immediately. "Help me understand what I'm looking at here." I turned my laptop toward her. "You're better with numbers than I am. These accounts, these transfers, what does it all mean?" We spent the next 4 hours going through everything. Simone had minored in accounting before deciding graphic design was more interesting. She helped me create a spreadsheet documenting every suspicious transaction, every hidden account, every transfer I couldn't explain. "He's hiding money," she finally concluded. "Like a lot of money. These offshore accounts, this Delaware LLC, the property management company, he's been moving assets out of reach for years. So when I file for divorce, he'll claim he doesn't have much. He'll point to business debts or tied-up investments. Meanwhile, millions are sitting in places you can't easily touch." She looked at me seriously. "You need that forensic accountant your divorce lawyer will recommend. And you need to move fast before he realizes you know." "How do I act normal when he comes home tomorrow?" My voice cracked slightly. "How do I look at him and pretend everything's fine?" Simone reached across and squeezed my hand. "You remember that theater class we took sophomore year? The one where you played that woman who was secretly planning to escape her controlling husband?" I actually smiled slightly at the memory. I got a standing ovation. "Exactly. You're an excellent actress when you need to be. Channel that." She stood up and started pacing the way she always did when she was planning something. "Here's what we do. You act completely normal. Sweet, supportive wife. You ask about his fishing trip. You tell him you missed him. You make his favorite breakfast. Give him absolutely no reason to suspect anything. While I'm actually building your case, documenting everything, meeting with lawyers, preparing for war." She stopped pacing and looked at me. "He thinks you're this sweet, naive woman who'll never question him. Let him keep thinking that right up until the moment you destroy him. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just losing a marriage. I was losing the version of myself I'd become over the past 6 years. The version that deferred to Brett's decisions. The version that made excuses for his behavior. The version that made herself smaller so he could feel bigger. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. Yes, you can. Simone's voice was firm. You're Naomi Grant. You built a successful interior design portfolio while being married to a workaholic. You negotiated with contractors twice your age who tried to dismiss you. You once redesigned an entire penthouse in 3 weeks when the client moved up their deadline. You're capable of so much more than he ever gave you credit for. She was right. Before Brett, I'd been confident and ambitious. Somehow, I'd lost that along the way. I want my own firm, I said suddenly. I've been working as an independent contractor for years, taking projects here and there. But I want my own company. My own clients. My own success that has nothing to do with being Brett Grant's wife. Simone grinned. Now you're talking. And I know a brilliant graphic designer who could help with branding. You do that. Naomi, Todd and I have been circling the drain for months. I've been looking for an excuse to end it and focus on my work. Let's both stop wasting time on men who don't deserve us and build something together instead. For the first time since yesterday afternoon, I felt something other than pain. I felt possibility. We spent the rest of the day planning. Not just my divorce strategy but what came after. Simone sketched logo ideas while I made lists of potential clients. We researched what it would take to officially form a design firm. We talked about office space and portfolios and business models. By the time she left that evening, I had notebooks full of plans and a slightly clearer head. Sunday morning, I cleaned the house thoroughly, removing any evidence of my research. I hid the notebooks in my car. I made sure Brett's laptop was exactly where he'd left it. I put fresh sheets on our bed and moved my pillow back from the guest room. Then I drove to the market and bought ingredients for Brett's favorite meal. Ribeye steaks, garlic green beans, and the ingredients for homemade tiramisu. If I was going to play the devoted wife, I was going to do it convincingly. At 6 o'clock Sunday evening, Brett's Range Rover pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as he grabbed his duffel bag from the back, noting how relaxed he looked. How happy. Of course he was happy. He'd spent the weekend with his mistress. I pasted on a smile and met him at the door. Hey baby, he said, kissing my forehead exactly as I'd predicted. Something smells amazing. I missed you, I said, and was surprised by how normal my voice sounded. I made your favorite. You're the best. He headed toward the stairs. Let me shower quick and I'll be right down. I listened to him climb the stairs, heard the bathroom door close, heard the water start running. And I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the meal I'd prepared for a man I no longer loved, preparing to play the role of my life. Simone was right. I could do this. I had to. Because Brett Grant was about to learn that the biggest mistake he'd ever made wasn't having an affair. It was underestimating the woman he'd betrayed. Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after you've made peace with a difficult decision. I woke up before Brett, made coffee, and watched him sleep for a moment. He looked peaceful, completely unaware that his life was about to implode. Part of me wanted to pour the hot coffee on his head. The bigger part knew patience would serve me better. I was in my home office by 7:30, waiting for business hours. At 9 o'clock sharp, my phone rang. Leonard Hayes' office. Mrs. Grant. A crisp female voice. Mr. Hayes received your email. He'd like to meet with you this afternoon if you're available. 2 o'clock. I'll be there. She gave me an address in a high-rise downtown, the kind of building where billionaires conducted business. Fitting. I spent the morning preparing. I printed every suspicious financial document. I organized the photos and videos from the lake house onto a thumb drive. I created a timeline of Brett's fishing trips, cross-referenced with credit card charges and calendar entries. By the time I left for the appointment, I had an accordion folder 3 inches thick. Leonard Hayes' office occupied the entire 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furniture was the kind of expensive minimalism that screamed success. The receptionist led me to a conference room where a man in his 50s sat reviewing documents. He had silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Grant. He stood, shaking my hand firmly. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? I'm fine, thank you. He gestured to the folder I'd placed on the table. I'm assuming that's for me? Everything I've gathered so far. I opened it, pulling out the organized sections. Photos and video evidence of the affair. Financial documents showing asset transfers and hidden accounts. A timeline of his lies. Credit card statements proving he's been living a double life. Leonard Hayes spent 20 minutes reviewing everything in silence. His expression never changed, but I saw his eyebrows raise slightly when he got to the offshore account transfers. Finally he looked up. How long have you known? Since Friday. I caught them at his lake house. And your husband has no idea you know? None. He thinks I was home all weekend. Good. He closed the folder. Here's the situation, Mrs. Grant. Your husband is clearly having an affair, and you have excellent documentation of it. However, this financial situation is more complex than typical divorce cases. He's been systematically hiding assets for at least 2 years, possibly longer. Can we get it back? With the right forensic accountant, yes. Most of it anyway. He leaned forward. But I need to be honest with you. This will get ugly. Your husband will fight hard to protect his money. He'll try to paint you as a gold digger. He'll drag this out as long as possible, hoping you'll settle for less. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Brett's hands on Candace's waist. About 18 months of lies. About the future they were planning while I played the oblivious wife. I'm prepared, I said firmly. Good. Because I don't take cases I don't think I can win, and Mrs. Grant, I think we can absolutely destroy him. He smiled, and it was the smile of a shark scenting blood. Here's what we're going to do. We spent the next 2 hours planning strategy. Leonard explained that we needed to move quickly but quietly. File the paperwork before Brett could hide more assets. Get court orders freezing accounts. Bring in Trevor Brooks, a forensic accountant who'd worked on several high-profile cases. The key, Leonard explained, is that your husband can't know you're preparing to file until the moment he's served. Can you maintain the facade at home? Yes. For how long? This could take weeks to prepare properly. I thought about Simone's words. About the theater class. About being an actress when necessary. As long as it takes. Leonard nodded approvingly. One more thing. Do you have any family or friends you trust completely? People who could testify to your husband's character or behavior if needed. I thought immediately of Simone. But then another name occurred to me. His mother. Patricia. His mother? She's never approved of how he treats me. I've heard her arguing with him about it, though he always dismisses her concerns. She's traditional, believes in honoring commitments. If she knew about the affair, would she testify for you? I think she would. She values integrity above everything. I paused. But I'd need to tell her carefully. She's in her 70s and has a heart condition. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, focus on documentation and maintaining normalcy at home. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. I'll have my team prepare the initial paperwork. Trevor Brooks will contact you this week about the financial investigation. And Mrs. Grant? Don't confront your husband. Don't hint that anything's wrong. If he gets spooked and starts moving money, this becomes exponentially harder. I understand. I left his office feeling like I'd just enlisted in a war. Which I supposed I had. The rest of the week passed in a surreal blur. Brett came home every evening around 8, ate dinner, and retreated to his office for more work. I played the perfect wife, asking about his day, making meals, acting interested in his boring stories about tech investments and board meetings. Wednesday afternoon, Trevor Brooks called. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with an energetic voice that reminded me of a college professor. Mrs. Grant, Leonard sent over your documentation. This is excellent work, by the way. Most clients don't gather half this much information. Papers rustled in the background. I need access to all financial accounts, both joint and individual. Any account your husband has that you know about, I need the information. I can get you everything he keeps at home. But some of these accounts, I only know they exist because of statements I found. I don't have login information. That's fine. We can subpoena the records once we file. But anything you can give me now helps build the picture faster. He paused. I'm going to be honest with you. What your husband has done here, moving this much money offshore, using shell corporations, this goes beyond typical divorce asset protection. This looks like he's been planning something for a while. My stomach clenched. Planning what? Either planning to leave you or planning for something else. I can't say for sure yet. But men don't usually go to this much trouble to hide money unless they're preparing for a major life change. He cleared his throat. Have you noticed any other unusual behavior? Large purchases? New insurance policies? Changes to beneficiaries? I thought back over the past 2 years. He updated his will about a year ago. Said it was just routine stuff for the business. I need a copy of that will. It's in his office safe at home. Can you get it without him knowing? I looked at the clock. Brett wouldn't be home for another 4 hours. I can try. After we hung up, I went to Brett's home office and stared at the safe built into the wall behind a painting. I'd watched him open it dozens of times but never paid close attention to the combination. I tried his birthday. Nothing. The lake house purchase date. Nothing. Our wedding anniversary. The safe clicked open. My hands shook as I pulled out the contents. His passport. Stock certificates. Property deeds. And there, a folder labeled, estate planning documents. I photographed every page, making sure the images were clear. Then I found something else, a second phone. An iPhone with a cracked screen hidden at the back of the safe. Brett's main phone was an iPhone with a distinctive blue case. This one was completely different. I pressed the power button but it was dead. I grabbed the charger from his desk and plugged it in, waiting while it came to life. No password. The phone opened directly to the home screen. Messages. Dozens of conversations. I scrolled through names I didn't recognize, messages that made my skin crawl. Candace was there, of course. But so were others. A woman named Rachel. Someone saved as Miami Girl. Another as Phoenix. He hadn't just been having one affair. He'd been having multiple affairs. I photographed everything, my hands steadier now with rage. Each conversation. Each photo he'd received. Each text about meeting up, about secrets, about how he couldn't wait to see them. The estate planning documents showed something else troubling. Brett had changed his beneficiaries 6 months ago. I wasn't listed anywhere. Everything went to Grant Family Trust, which I'd never heard of before. I sent all the photos to my secure cloud account, then carefully returned everything to the safe exactly as I'd found it. The burner phone went back on its charger, hidden in my office closet where I could keep monitoring it. By the time Brett came home that evening, I'd sent Trevor everything I'd found and was sitting at the kitchen counter looking at paint samples for a fictional client project. "Hey," Brett said, loosening his tie. "What's for dinner?" "I thought we'd order in. Chinese?" "Perfect." He headed upstairs without kissing me, without really looking at me. I watched him go and felt absolutely nothing. The man I'd married, the man I'd thought I loved, didn't exist. He'd never existed. This stranger who kept burner phones and changed his will to cut me out was the real Brett Grant. Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Patricia Grant's name appeared on the screen. "Naomi, dear," Brett's mother said in her refined voice. "I was hoping you and I could have lunch next week. Just the two of us." "I'd love that, Patricia." "Wonderful. How's Tuesday?" "I know a lovely cafe in the art district." We made plans and I wondered if she somehow sensed something was wrong. Patricia had always been kind to me, warmer than my own mother in many ways. She'd welcomed me into the Grant family without reservation. She deserved to know the truth. Tuesday came and I met Patricia at the cafe she'd suggested. It was elegant but understated, filled with artwork from local galleries. Patricia arrived in a green dress and pearls, her white hair styled perfectly as always. We ordered salads and made small talk about her garden club and my design projects. Then Patricia set down her fork and looked at me seriously. "Naomi, I'm going to be direct because I'm too old for games. Is my son making you happy?" The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask?" "Because I know my son. I love him, but I'm not blind to his faults. He's ambitious to a fault like his father was. And ambition has a way of making men selfish." She reached across and squeezed my hand. "I've watched you dim yourself over the years. That bright, confident woman who first came to our home has become someone quieter, smaller. And I've wondered if Brett is the cause." Tears stung my eyes. "Patricia, there's something I need to tell you." So I did. Not everything, but enough. I told her about finding Brett at the lake house with another woman. I didn't mention the burner phone with multiple affairs or the hidden money or the changed will. Just the basic truth. Her son was cheating on me and I was filing for divorce. Patricia's face went pale. "I was afraid of something like this. His father had affairs too, you know. I stayed because that's what women did in my generation. But I've regretted it every day since." She gripped my hand tighter. "Don't make my mistake, Naomi. Don't waste your life on a man who doesn't value your worth." "I'm not. I've hired Leonard Hayes." "Leonard Hayes." Patricia smiled grimly. "Good. He's ruthless. Brett will hate that." "Patricia, there's something else. My lawyer might need character witnesses. People who can testify about Brett's behavior during our marriage." She straightened in her chair. "I'll do it. Whatever you need." "Even against your own son?" "Especially against my own son." Maybe it will teach him the consequences of treating people like they're disposable. Her eyes were fierce despite her age. My father used to say character is what you do when no one is watching. Brett has shown his character and it's lacking. He needs to face that. I felt a weight lift. Having Patricia on my side changed everything. There's one more thing, I said carefully. I'm starting my own interior design firm. Breaking away from contracting and building my own client base. I was wondering if you knew anyone who might be interested in my services. Patricia's smile turned genuine. Dear, I know everyone. And they all need designers. Consider it done. She pulled out her phone and started making a list of names right there at lunch. Society wives with historic homes to renovate. Business owners opening new hotels. Art collectors building private galleries. By the time we left the cafe 2 hours later, I had 15 potential leads and something else. An ally who'd known Brett longer than anyone else alive. That evening Leonard called with an update. Trevor's finished his initial analysis. It's worse than we thought. Worse how? Your husband has approximately $48 million in assets. You've been living on what amounts to an allowance while he's been building this empire. Papers shuffled. The good news is that most of it is trackable. The bad news is he's going to fight like hell to keep it. How much can we get? Half. Maybe more, depending on what else we uncover and how well we can prove he was hiding assets intentionally. He paused. Mrs. Grant, I need to ask you something. When did your husband's business really take off? When did the money start rolling in? I thought back. About 5 years ago. He made a major tech investment that paid off huge. After that, more deals kept coming. And you've been married for 6 years. So everything he's earned during your marriage is technically marital property. Leonard's voice held satisfaction. He can't claim these are premarital assets. Every dollar is subject to division. And given his infidelity and asset hiding, we can make a strong case for you deserving more than half. For the first time since finding Brett at the lake house, I felt something like justice. When do we file? I asked. Next week. I want everything bulletproof before we move. Can you maintain the act until then? I thought about Brett coming home that evening. About making dinner, about pretending everything was fine for a few more days. Yes, I said. I can do that. Because at the end of the next week, Brett Grant's carefully constructed lies were going to come crashing down around him. And I was going to be there to watch it happen. The next week passed in a strange state of heightened awareness. Every interaction with Brett felt like a performance, and I found myself noting details I'd previously overlooked. The way he checked his burner phone when he thought I wasn't looking. How he'd started working out more, buying new clothes. The expensive cologne that appeared in our bathroom. He was preparing for his new life with Candace right under my nose. Meanwhile, I was building my own foundation. Wednesday morning, I met Simone at a small office space in the Arts District. 2 rooms, big windows, exposed brick. Perfect for a boutique design firm. The lease is month to month for the first 6 months, the property manager explained. After that, you can sign a longer term if it's working out. I looked at Simone. She grinned and nodded. We'll take it, I said. We spent the afternoon moving in furniture from IKEA and thrift stores. Nothing fancy yet, just enough to make it functional. Simone set up her graphic design station in one corner while I claimed the desk by the window. Grant Design Studio, Simone said, sticking vinyl letters to the glass door. Has a nice ring to it. Not Grant, I said firmly. I'm done with that name. Let's call it Naomi Cole Design. Cole was my maiden name, the name I'd given up when I married Brett. Time to reclaim it. Even better. Simone peeled off the G and the R, leaving us to puzzle out how to rearrange the remaining letters. By evening, we had a functional office and Simone had designed a beautiful logo, my initials intertwined in an elegant script. We ordered business cards and started building a website. It felt like planting seeds for a garden I'd actually want to tend. Thursday morning, Patricia called with her first referral. Margot Chin owns the Riverside Hotel, that gorgeous old building they're renovating downtown. She needs the entire interior redesigned. High budget, creative freedom. I told her about you and she wants to meet tomorrow. Patricia, that's huge. The Riverside is a landmark. I know. Don't waste this opportunity. She paused. How are you holding up, dear? I'm okay. Really. Staying busy helps. Good. Busy is good. Idle hands and all that. She lowered her voice. Has Brett noticed anything different about you? No. He barely looks at me anymore. Then he's even more foolish than I thought. Friday afternoon, I met Margot Chen at the Riverside Hotel. She was in her 60s, sharp and direct. with the kind of presence that commanded rooms. "Patricia speaks very highly of you," she said, leading me through the gutted interior. "I need someone who can honor the building's history while making it feel current. Modern luxury with vintage soul." We spent 2 hours discussing vision and possibilities. By the time I left, I had the contract, a $50,000 deposit, and validation that I could succeed on my own merit. I was sitting in my car, still processing the win, when Leonard called. "We're filing Monday morning," he said without preamble. "Brett will be served at his office around 11. I need you somewhere safe when it happens, somewhere he can't find you immediately." "I'll be at my new office." "You have an office?" "As of Wednesday. Naomi Cole Design." "I'm not just walking away from this marriage, Leonard. I'm walking toward something better." "Good for you." I could hear the smile in his voice. "One more thing. Trevor found something interesting in the offshore accounts." "What?" "Regular transfers to Candace Pearson. $2,500 a month for the past year." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. He was paying her. It appears so. Which means this wasn't just an affair. This was a kept relationship. That distinction matters legally. How? It shows premeditation. Systematic deception. It helps our case that he was planning to leave you and wanted to protect his assets before doing so. Papers rustled. We also found something else. Candace Pearson is 3 months pregnant. The world tilted. Pregnant. Brett was going to be a father with another woman. "Mrs. Grant? Are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here." My voice sounded hollow. "I know this is difficult, but it actually helps us. A pregnant mistress, financial support, hidden assets? The judge is going to see a clear pattern of betrayal and planning." After we hung up, I sat in the hotel parking lot and cried. Not for Brett, not for our marriage, but for the future I'd imagined. I'd wanted children someday. We talked about it vaguely, and Brett always said later, when the business is more stable. Now I knew the truth. He didn't want children with me. He just wanted them with someone else. I drove to Simone's apartment instead of going home. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. "What happened?" "She's pregnant. Candace. Brett's going to be a father." Simone's expression went from sympathetic to furious in seconds. "That absolute piece of trash. Are you okay?" "I don't know." I sank onto her couch. Part of me is relieved because it means I never have to wonder what if. But part of me is just sad. We were supposed to have that together someday. You can still have kids. Just not with him. And honestly, thank God for that, because can you imagine co-parenting with someone who keeps burner phones and offshore accounts? She was right, of course. But it still hurt. We ordered pizza and Simone let me vent for 2 hours. She didn't try to fix anything, just listened and occasionally threw in colorful descriptions of what Brett deserved. "Monday changes everything," I said eventually. "After he's served, there's no going back." "Are you having second thoughts?" "No. Just, it's real now. This is really happening." "Good. It should happen. He deserves every bad thing coming to him." She grabbed my hand. "And you deserve everything good that's coming to you. The Riverside Project, your own firm, freedom from a lying cheater. This is your liberation, Naomi. Don't let sadness about what could have been stop you from celebrating what will be." Saturday and Sunday passed in a fog. Brett spent most of the weekend playing golf with business associates. I used the time to pack a bag of essentials and move it to my new office. Clothes, toiletries, important documents. Everything I'd need if I couldn't go home right away. Sunday evening, Brett came home sunburned and in a good mood. He'd shot under par for the first time, apparently. He talked through dinner about his game while I pushed food around my plate. "You're quiet tonight," he observed. "Everything okay?" "Just tired. I landed a big project this week." "That's great, babe." He didn't ask any follow-up questions. Didn't ask what project or how I felt about it. Just went back to talking about golf. I realized that this was what our marriage had become. Him talking, me listening, both of us pretending it was enough. "I might need to travel next month," Brett said casually as we cleared dishes. "There's a tech conference in Miami." Miami, where Miami Girl from his burner phone lived. "Sounds good," I said evenly. "Let me know the dates." He wouldn't be going to Miami. By next month, he'd be dealing with divorce proceedings and forensic accountants and the implosion of his carefully constructed double life. Monday morning arrived with perfect weather, as if the universe had a sense of irony. Brett left for work at 7:30 like always. I waited until 8, then drove to my office instead of to the gym where I usually spent Monday mornings. Simone met me there with coffee and bagels. "You ready?" she asked. "No. But I'm doing it anyway." At exactly 9 o'clock, Leonard called. The paperwork's filed. Process server is on his way to Brett's office now. Should happen within the hour. Okay. Stay where you are. Don't answer calls from Brett. Let him stew for a while. We'll schedule a meeting for later this week to discuss next steps. Thank you, Leonard. Don't thank me yet. This is where it gets ugly. He hung up. I stared at my phone, imagining Brett in his corner office with city views. Imagining the moment someone would walk in and hand him papers that would change everything. Coffee, Simone said firmly, pressing a cup into my hands. And then we're working on the Riverside project. You need to stay busy. She was right. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing fabric samples and architectural plans for the hotel. At 11:17 my phone started ringing. Brett's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer, Simone said. The call went to voicemail. Immediately he called again. And again. And again. After the 6th call, text messages started flooding in. What the hell, Naomi? Call me right now. This is insane. You can't be serious. Call me. I turned my phone face down on the desk and tried to focus on work. But my hands were shaking and I couldn't concentrate. At noon, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Grant. A woman's voice I didn't recognize. This is Andrea from Mr. Grant's office. Mr. Grant asked me to call because you're not answering his calls. He says it's urgent. Tell Mr. Grant to speak to my attorney, Leonard Hayes. I hung up. Simone was grinning. That was cold. I loved it. I'm terrified. You're also brave. Don't forget that part. My phone rang again. This time it was Leonard. Your husband just called me. He's upset. That's putting it mildly, I'm guessing. He alternated between threatening to destroy you in court and begging to talk to you. I told him all communication goes through me now. He didn't take it well. What happens next? He has 30 days to respond to the petition. His lawyer will reach out to me this week to discuss terms. In the meantime, the court has frozen the offshore accounts pending investigation. He can't move any more money around. Good. One more thing. Be prepared for him to show up at your house. He's not going to just accept this. I'm staying with a friend tonight. Smart. I'll call you tomorrow with updates. The rest of the day felt surreal. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. Brett called 15 more times from different numbers. He sent dozens of texts ranging from angry to pleading. I didn't respond to any of them. At 6 o'clock, Patricia called. Naomi, Brett just left my house. He's looking for you. What did you tell him? That I didn't know where you were, which is true. But dear, be careful. He's angrier than I've ever seen him. I will. Thank you for the warning. After dark, Simone and I drove by my house. Brett's Range Rover sat in the driveway, lights on throughout the house. He was home waiting for me. You can stay with me as long as you need, Simone said. I know. Thank you. We drove to her apartment and I tried to settle in for the night. But sleep was impossible. Every noise made me jump, every car passing outside made me wonder if Brett had somehow tracked me down. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know you're reading these. We need to talk. This doesn't have to be ugly. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Please, Naomi. Call me. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the lake house, the burner phone, Candace's pregnancy, the $48 million he'd hidden. I deleted the text and turned off my phone. Tomorrow I'd start building my new life in earnest. But tonight I just needed to survive the first day of freedom. The next few weeks were a chess game where every move mattered. Brett tried everything to make me talk to him. He showed up at my office twice. Security escorted him out both times. He sent flowers with apologetic cards. I donated them to a nursing home. He even tried to use Patricia as a mediator, not knowing she was on my side. He wants marriage counseling, Patricia reported over lunch. Says you're being unreasonable. Of course he does. I told him that ships sailed when he started sleeping with other women. She sipped her tea delicately. He didn't like that. Meanwhile, Trevor Brooks was uncovering more damning evidence. The Grant Property Holdings LLC owned 3 condos, one in Miami, one in Phoenix, one in the Bahamas. All 3 cities where Brett had business trips regularly. All 3 cities where women from his burner phone lived. He's been maintaining separate residences for his affairs, Trevor explained during a conference call with Leonard. The monthly payments you found? Those are rent and utilities. Can we prove he used marital funds for this? Leonard asked. Absolutely. Every payment traces back to accounts funded by his business income during the marriage. It's textbook dissipation of marital assets. I sat in my office, listening to them dissect Brett's lies, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Every revelation made our case stronger. But I wanted more than a good court case. I wanted consequences beyond financial penalties. I wanted the world to see who Brett Grant really was. That's when I started making strategic calls. First, I contacted 3 business associates' wives I'd become friendly with over the years. Women who'd invited me to charity events and garden parties. Women whose husbands were Brett's partners in various deals. "Helen, I need to tell you something about Brett," I said to the first one. "I'm filing for divorce because he's been having affairs. Multiple affairs. And I'm worried some of the business ventures he's involved in might not be completely legitimate." Helen Richmond was a retired prosecutor with sharp instincts. "Tell me everything." I did. About the offshore accounts, the shell corporations, the hidden assets. Not everything Trevor had found, but enough to plant seeds of concern. "My husband has money invested in Brett's new tech fund," Helen said slowly. "If there are irregularities." "I'm not saying there definitely are. I'm just saying you might want your husband to look closely at the paperwork." After we hung up, I made similar calls to 2 other wives. Within a week, Brett's business partners were asking questions, requesting audits, pulling out of deals. His carefully built reputation started cracking. Then I did something that probably crossed the line, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I created an anonymous email account and sent a simple message to Candace's work address. "Ask Brett about Miami Girl and Phoenix," and the burner phone in his office safe. 3 days later, Leonard called with an update. "Your husband's mistress just filed a paternity suit demanding child support and a financial settlement. She claims he promised to marry her and set her up in a house, then reneged on the deal. She found out about the others. However she found out, it's helping us. She's subpoenaing his financial records for her case, which gives us more ammunition for ours." He paused. "Did you have anything to do with her finding out?" "Would it matter if I did?" "Legally, no. Ethically, it's a gray area. Personally, I think it's brilliant." Candace's lawsuit was public record. Within days, the story spread through Brett's social circles. The billionaire investor with a pregnant mistress and a divorce in progress made for juicy gossip. His business started hemorrhaging clients. 2 partnerships dissolved entirely. The tech fund he was raising money for stalled as investors backed out. I watched it all unfold from my office where business was booming. Patricia's referrals kept coming. The Riverside Hotel project was progressing beautifully. I'd hired 2 junior designers to help with overflow work. Naomi Cole Design was becoming a real company. One evening about 6 weeks after serving Brett, I was working late at the office when my phone rang. Brett's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "What do you want?" "Naomi." His voice was rough, defeated. "Please, can we just talk? We have nothing to talk about." "Yes, we do. I need to explain." "Explain what? The affairs? The hidden money? Which part needs explanation, Brett?" "I made mistakes, but you're destroying my life. My business is falling apart. My partners are suing me. Candace is taking me to court. This is too much. Too much." I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to me. "You spent 18 months lying to my face. You hid millions of dollars. You got another woman pregnant. But I'm the one going too far. I never meant for any of this to happen. You absolutely meant for it to happen. You just didn't mean to get caught." I took a breath. "We're done, Brett. Sign the settlement papers Leonard sent you and let's end this." "Those terms are ridiculous. You want half of everything." "I'm entitled to half. We were married for 6 years. That's how community property works. You didn't earn any of that money." And there it was. His true feelings finally out in the open. "You're right," I said calmly. "I didn't close deals or invest in tech startups. I just managed your household, hosted your business dinners, made sure you had clean clothes and hot meals. I networked with clients' wives, built relationships that helped you land contracts. I designed our home to impress the partners you wanted to woo. I gave up my own career ambitions to support yours. But you're right, Brett. I didn't earn anything." Silence on the other end. "Sign the papers," I said. "Or I'll see you in court, where I'll make sure every ugly detail becomes public record." I hung up before he could respond. The next morning, Trevor called with more news. We found the Grant family trust documents. The one where he changed his beneficiaries. And? The trust was established 2 years ago with Candace listed as a secondary beneficiary. If something happened to Brett, she would have inherited millions. He was planning this for 2 years? It appears so. But here's the interesting part. About 6 months ago he tried to add another beneficiary. Someone named Rachel Monroe. Miami girl. He'd been planning to leave Candace for someone else. These men, Trevor said wearily. They think they're so smart but they always leave trails. By noon, Leonard had filed motions to invalidate the trust and restore me as the primary beneficiary on Brett's life insurance and retirement accounts. The court granted them immediately. Brett was losing on every front. That weekend I was at the office finalizing designs for the Riverside Hotel when someone knocked on the door. I looked up to see a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, probably late 20s, casually dressed. Candace. I stood slowly. You need to leave. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. She looked tired, her face puffy in the way of early pregnancy. I didn't know about you at first. I swear. I don't care. He told me he was divorced. That you'd split up amicably and were just waiting for paperwork to finalize. I believed him for almost a year before I got suspicious. Despite myself, I was curious. What made you suspicious? He wouldn't let me call him at home. Wouldn't spend holidays with me. Always had excuses for why I couldn't meet his family. She wrapped her arms around herself. Then I got pregnant and he started acting strange. Distant. That's when I hired a private investigator and learned the truth. What do you want from me, Candace? I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I am. If I'd known he was married, I never would have. She trailed off. And I wanted you to know I'm not trying to get anything from you in this divorce. My lawsuit is against him, not you. That's big of you, considering you slept with my husband for 18 months. You're right. I'm sorry. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, he's not who you think he is. The things I've learned about him since all this started? He's worse than either of us knew. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time. Part of me hated her for her role in this. But a bigger part recognized that we'd both been lied to by the same man. 2 days later, Leonard called with news that made all the maneuvering worthwhile. Brett's agreed to settle. He'll sign the papers this week. What changed? His business is tanking and he can't afford a protracted court battle. Plus, Candace's paternity suit is draining his resources. He's desperate to end at least one of his legal problems. What's the final settlement? $24 million in assets and property. Ongoing alimony of $50,000 a month for 5 years. You keep the brownstone, the lake house, and 3 investment properties. He keeps his business and retirement accounts, though those are depleted from legal fees and settlements. $24 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. That's half of what Trevor found. The other half got eaten by debt, legal fees, and hiding it so poorly that investigators found it. This is what's actually liquidatable right now. It's a solid win. When do I sign? Friday. Judge will finalize everything at a hearing. You don't have to face Brett if you don't want to. I want to be there. You sure? I want to watch him sign away his lies. Friday morning, I dressed in a green suit that made me feel powerful. Simone came with me to the courthouse, sitting in the gallery while I sat at a table with Leonard. Brett arrived with his lawyer looking like he'd aged 10 years. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight loss or the dark circles under his eyes. The proceedings were brief. The judge reviewed the settlement terms, confirmed we both understood them, and asked if we agreed. Yes, Your Honor, I said clearly. Brett hesitated just long enough to be noticeable. Yes, Your Honor. We signed the papers. Just like that, 6 years of marriage dissolved into legal documents and property divisions. As Brett stood to leave, he looked at me. I hope you're happy. I'm getting there, I said. And I meant it. The week after the hearing felt like emerging from underwater. For 2 months, I'd been operating in crisis mode, every decision strategic, every move calculated. Now, with the divorce finalized, I could finally breathe. Except Brett wasn't done. Tuesday afternoon, I was at the Riverside Hotel reviewing tile samples with Margot when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Naomi, it's Hugh Bannister. Brett's business partner, one of the men whose wife I'd contacted weeks ago. I think we need to talk. My stomach tightened. About what? About Brett and some irregularities in the tech fund we'd been developing together. Can you meet me today? 2 hours later, I sat in a quiet coffee shop across from Hugh and his lawyer. Hugh looked uncomfortable, pushing his glasses up nervously as his lawyer laid out papers between us. We've been conducting an audit of the venture fund, the lawyer explained. Your ex-husband, was using investor money inappropriately. taking personal draws, funding unrelated projects, moving money between accounts in ways that violate our partnership agreement. I thought of Trevor's findings about offshore accounts and shell corporations. How much money are we talking about? Approximately 12 million over 2 years. I kept my face neutral, but internally I was reeling. Why are you telling me this? Hugh spoke up. Because some of that money went into accounts we think you might have information about. The Grant Property Holdings LLC 41. If you can help us recover the funds, we'll leave you out of the investigation entirely. But if you don't cooperate, are you threatening me? We're offering you a way to stay clear of a very messy situation, the lawyer said smoothly. Brett's going down for fraud. The question is whether you go down with him. I stood up. I have no information about Brett's business dealings. I only learned about the LLC during my own divorce investigation, and my attorney has already provided everything I knew to the forensic accountant. If you want to pursue Brett, that's your business. But I won't be your witness or your scapegoat. Mrs. Grant. It's Miss Cole now. And we're done here. I walked out, hands shaking. This was worse than I'd thought. Criminal fraud was something else entirely. I called Leonard immediately. Brett's partners are investigating him for fraud. They just tried to pressure me into cooperating. Don't talk to them again without me present. Forward me the lawyer's contact information and I'll handle it. He paused. Naomi, this changes things. If criminal charges get filed, that's not my problem. I'm divorced from him now. But if they find evidence you benefited from the fraud, I didn't know about it and they can't prove I did. My entire divorce case was built on the fact that he hid his financial dealings from me. Good point. Still, we need to be careful. That evening, I met Patricia for dinner. She'd heard about the investigation from her own circles. I never thought Brett would go this far, she said, looking older than usual. Adultery is one thing, but stealing from investors? That's criminal. Did you know anything about his business practices? No. His father taught him to keep work and family separate. I only knew what Brett chose to tell me, which wasn't much. She reached across the table. Naomi, I'm so sorry you got dragged into this. I'm not dragged into anything. I got out. Yes, you did. Thank God. She smiled slightly. And you're thriving. I've heard wonderful things about your hotel project. We spent the rest of dinner discussing design choices for the riverside, deliberately avoiding the topic of Brett. But as we parted ways, Patricia grabbed my hand. Whatever happens to my son, he brought it on himself. Don't feel guilty about any of it. I don't, I said honestly. Is that cold? It's self-preservation. There's nothing cold about that. The rest of the week passed with mounting tension. Hugh's investigation became public knowledge. News articles appeared about billionaire investor under scrutiny for fraud. Brett's remaining business collapsed. His tech fund dissolved entirely as investors pulled out and filed lawsuits. Friday morning, I was at my office when Simone rushed in looking alarmed. Brett's outside. He's demanding to talk to you. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. Call security. Already did. But Naomi, he looks bad. Like really bad. Against my better judgment, I went to the window and looked down. Brett stood on the sidewalk, his suit rumpled, his hair uncombed. He looked up at my office window, and even from this distance, I could see the desperation in his face. Security arrived and spoke to him. He gestured wildly, clearly arguing. After a few minutes, they escorted him away from the building. My phone rang immediately. Brett's number. I answered. Stop coming to my office. Naomi, please. I need help. No. They're going to arrest me. The fraud investigation, it's getting worse. I need character witnesses. I need people to testify that I'm not a bad person. You want me to lie for you. I want you to tell the truth. We were married for 6 years. You know me. I didn't know you at all, apparently. The man I thought I married wouldn't have done any of this. I made mistakes. You committed crimes, Brett. You stole from investors. You lied to everyone. Those aren't mistakes, they're choices. If I go to prison, you'll never see another dollar of the settlement. Is that a threat? It's reality. The alimony payments come from my business income. If I'm in prison, there is no income. Then you should have thought about that before you committed fraud. I took a deep breath. Here's what I know, Brett. You spent our entire marriage lying to me, cheating on me, stealing from people who trusted you. And now that you're facing consequences, you want me to save you. But I won't. Not because I'm cruel, but because you need to face what you've done. So that's it? You're just going to abandon me? You abandoned us the moment you chose Candace. and Rachel, and whoever else there was. You made your choices, now live with them. I hung up and blocked his number. Simone was standing in the doorway. You okay? Yeah. Actually, I am. And I was. For the first time since finding Brett at the lake house, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. Monday morning, Leonard called with an update. Brett was arrested this morning. Fraud charges, multiple counts. He made bail, but the trial will happen in about 6 months. What does that mean for my settlement? The court's putting protections in place. Your property distributions are finalized and can't be touched. The alimony might be impacted if he's convicted and can't earn income, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't need his money anymore anyway. The business is doing well. That's good, because things are going to get worse for him before they get better. Leonard was right. Over the next month, more details emerged. Brett had been running an elaborate scheme, promising investors huge returns while funneling money into personal accounts. The properties in Miami, Phoenix, and the Bahamas weren't just love nests. They were part of a fraudulent real estate portfolio he'd claimed as business investments. Candace's lawsuit escalated as her lawyers discovered she'd been lied to about his finances. Brett had promised her a house and security, using investor money to buy her affection. The whole thing was messier than anyone had imagined. Through it all, I kept working. The Riverside Hotel project wrapped up on time and under budget. Margot was so pleased she recommended me to 3 other property developers. My portfolio grew. My staff expanded to 5 people. Naomi Cole Design became one of the most sought-after firms in the city. 3 months after the divorce, I was featured in a local business magazine. From betrayal to business success, how one woman built her dream after divorce. The article talked about my journey without naming Brett, but anyone who followed society news knew who my ex-husband was. The morning the article published, Patricia called. I'm so proud of you. You've taken something terrible and built something beautiful. Thank you. That means a lot. Brett called me yesterday. He wanted me to call you to ask you to testify on his behalf at the trial. What did you tell him? That he's fortunate I'm still taking his calls at all, and that if he wants character witnesses, he should try being a person of character. She paused. I won't be testifying for him either. I love my son, but I can't lie about who he is. I'm sorry you're going through this. Don't be. I raised him to be better than this. Whatever happens now is his own doing. Brett's trial date was set for early December. As it approached, his lawyers contacted Leonard multiple times asking if I'd testify. Each time Leonard told them no. They're desperate, he explained during one of our calls. The prosecution has a solid case and Brett has no defense. They're hoping sympathy from an ex-wife might sway the jury. They won't get it from me. Good. Stay far away from this. You've moved on. Let him face this alone. The week before the trial, I ran into Candace at a grocery store. She was obviously pregnant now, her belly prominent under a loose dress. We made eye contact across the produce section. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked over. Hi, she said awkwardly. Hi. I'm not testifying either. In case you were wondering. My lawyer advised against it. Good. She touched her stomach unconsciously. I'm having a girl. Brett doesn't know. He hasn't tried to contact me since the arrest. I didn't know what to say. This woman was carrying my ex-husband's child, but she was also another victim of his lies. I hope things work out for you, I said finally. Thanks. You too. She hesitated. Your business, I've seen the articles. You're doing really well. I am. Good. At least one of us got something positive out of this mess. We parted ways and I realized I didn't hate her anymore. She was just another person trying to rebuild after Brett's destruction. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I didn't attend, but news coverage was constant. Former investors testified about their losses. Business partners detailed Brett's lies. Forensic accountants walked the jury through complex financial schemes. Brett's defense was weak, claiming misunderstandings and poor record-keeping rather than intentional fraud. No one believed him. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When the verdict came back, Leonard called immediately. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing in 6 weeks. How long? Could be anywhere from 5 to 15 years depending on the judge. I sat in my office looking out at the city skyline and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, just acceptance. This was how it ended. Not with reconciliation or forgiveness, but with consequences. Brett had built his empire on lies. Now that empire had crumbled, and he was facing the reality of his choices. And I was free. The 6 weeks between Brett's conviction and sentencing felt like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Each day brought new revelations about the extent of his fraud, and with each revelation more of his former life crumbled away. His luxury condo in the downtown high-rise, the one he'd kept separate from our brownstone, was seized to pay restitution to investors. The lake house, the one where I'd discovered his affair, went on the market as part of his bankruptcy proceedings. Even his car collection was auctioned off. I watched it all from the safety of my new life, feeling like I was observing a stranger's downfall rather than my ex-husband's. Meanwhile, Naomi Cole Design was thriving beyond anything I'd imagined. The Riverside Hotel opened to rave reviews, with particular praise for the interior design. That single project led to contracts for 3 more historic building renovations, a private art gallery and a boutique apartment complex. I hired 3 more designers and moved to a larger office space with actual conference rooms and a proper reception area. Simone's graphic design business was booming too, partly from our collaboration and partly from her own growing reputation. "We should celebrate," she said one afternoon as we reviewed the quarter's financials. 6 months ago we were working out of a tiny office with borrowed furniture. Now look at us. "Let's wait until after Brett's sentencing," I said. I don't want to jinx anything. But truthfully, I was already celebrating in small ways. I'd bought myself a new car, a sleek hybrid I'd wanted for years but Brett said was impractical. I'd started taking art classes on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I'd even gone on a few dates, though nothing serious yet. The woman I'd been, the one who made herself smaller to fit Brett's expectations, was disappearing. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, more myself than I'd been in years. 2 weeks before sentencing, Patricia called with surprising news. "I've decided to testify at Brett's sentencing hearing." "I thought you weren't involved." "I'm not testifying for him. I'm testifying about him. The judge is allowing victim impact statements, and while I'm not technically a victim of his fraud, I've been a victim of his character for years. I want the judge to understand that this behavior isn't new, it's just escalated." "Patricia, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. For all the women he's hurt. For the investors he's stolen from. For you especially. Someone in his family needs to stand up and say that what he did was wrong and that we don't support it." The day of sentencing arrived cold and gray. I told Leonard I wouldn't attend, but that morning I changed my mind. I needed to see this through to the end. The courtroom was packed with investors, lawyers, and media. I sat in the back row, wearing a blue dress that made me feel professional and detached. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about closure. Brett was brought in wearing a suit that hung loose on his thinner frame. He didn't look at the gallery, keeping his eyes fixed straight ahead. His lawyer sat beside him, shuffling papers nervously. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Richardson, reviewed the case details before opening the floor for impact statements. Investors spoke first. Men and women who trusted Brett with their retirement savings, their children's college funds, their life savings. Some cried as they described financial devastation. Others spoke angrily about betrayal and lies. Brett kept his face blank through it all, but I saw his hands trembling in his lap. Then Patricia was called. She stood slowly, elegant even in her grief, and approached the microphone. "Your Honor, I'm Patricia Grant, the defendant's mother. I'm here today not to excuse my son's actions, but to ensure the court understands they weren't aberrations. They were patterns." She detailed years of problematic behavior. How Brett had cheated in college and his father had paid to make it go away. How he'd lied to previous business partners. How he treated relationships as transactions and people as obstacles to his ambitions. "I love my son," she concluded, her voice steady. "But I cannot defend him. He chose this path deliberately, repeatedly, despite many chances to change. These victims deserve justice, and my son deserves consequences that might finally teach him accountability." When she finished, Brett was crying silently. Patricia returned to her seat without looking at him. The judge called for a brief recess. I stepped outside for air, standing in the courthouse hallway trying to process everything. "Naomi." I turned to find Hugh Bannister, Brett's former business partner. We hadn't spoken since that coffee shop meeting months ago. "I owe you an apology," he said, "for trying to pressure you. You were a victim of Brett's lies too, and I didn't see that clearly at the time. Thank you. For what it's worth, the money we recovered from the LLC accounts is being distributed to investors. You helped make that happen by being willing to share what you knew." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. When court resumed, the prosecution recommended a sentence of 12 years. Brett's lawyer argued for leniency, citing his age, his lack of prior convictions, his potential for rehabilitation. Judge Richardson listened to both sides, then delivered her ruling. Mr. Grant, you had every advantage. Education, resources, opportunities. You chose to use those advantages to prey on people who trusted you. You showed no remorse until facing consequences, and even now I question whether you understand the harm you've caused. She sentenced him to 10 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 7 years. Additionally, she ordered full restitution to all victims, which would likely take decades to complete even after his release. Brett stood frozen as the sentence was read. Then guards escorted him from the courtroom, and just like that, it was over. I walked out into the cold afternoon feeling lighter than I had in months. Leonard met me on the courthouse steps. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I can finally move forward." "Good. You deserve that." He handed me a folder. "Final paperwork. Everything's settled now. The brownstone is yours free and clear, the investment properties are transferred, and the alimony will be paid from a trust set up specifically for that purpose before his assets were seized. So I actually get the full settlement?" "Every penny." The court made sure of it. We shook hands and I walked to my car, folder tucked under my arm. 10 years ago, I'd walked down an aisle believing I was marrying my forever. 6 years ago, I'd settled into a marriage that I thought was solid. 2 months ago, I'd finalized a divorce from a man I never really knew. And now, today, I was finally, completely free. That evening, I met Simone at our favorite restaurant. She raised her glass of wine in a toast. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed. We spent dinner laughing and planning future projects. The sentencing had been all over the news, and we both knew my name was mentioned in relation to Brett's case. But for the first time, that didn't bother me. I wasn't defined by my marriage anymore or by my divorce. I was defined by what I'd built after both. The next morning, I woke up in my beautiful brownstone, in the bedroom I'd redesigned to reflect my own taste rather than Brett's preferences. Sunlight streamed through gauzy curtains onto walls painted a soft sage green. My own artwork hung on the walls, abstract pieces I'd created in my art class. This was my space, my home, my life. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen island with my laptop, reviewing emails. 3 new project inquiries. A request for an interview with a design magazine. An invitation to speak at a women's business conference about building a company after major life changes. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Coffee this week? I'd like to catch up." I smiled and texted back, "Tuesday work for you?" As I sat there planning my week and thinking about future projects, I realized something profound. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even relieved. I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy in a way I hadn't been in years. Maybe ever. Brett's betrayal had destroyed my marriage, but it had also freed me to become someone better. Someone stronger. Someone who didn't need a husband's success to validate her worth. I thought about the scared woman who'd driven 3 hours to surprise her husband at a lake house, carrying lobster tails and hope. That woman felt like someone from another lifetime. The woman I was now wouldn't have made that drive. She would have already known her worth, already been building her own dreams, already been too busy creating her own success to worry about surprising a man who didn't appreciate her. But maybe I'd needed to be that woman first to become this one. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Miss Cole, this is regarding the penthouse renovation you submitted a proposal for last month. We'd love to discuss moving forward. Are you available this week?" I looked at the message and grinned. Another opportunity. Another project. Another step forward. "Thursday afternoon works perfectly," I typed back. "Looking forward to it." As I closed my laptop and headed to the shower to start my day, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked different than I had 6 months ago. Not just physically, though I'd been working out more and taking better care of myself. But something deeper had changed. I looked confident, capable, content. I looked like a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. And for the first time in my adult life, that was true. Brett's sentencing had been the final chapter in a story I was ready to close. But it was also the beginning of something new. My story. The one I got to write myself without anyone else's input or interference. And it was going to be spectacular. 7 months after Brett's sentencing, life had settled into a rhythm that felt right. Naomi Cole Design was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. We'd expanded to a team of 8, moved into a converted warehouse space with soaring ceilings and natural light, and built a client list that included some of the most prestigious names in the city. The money from the divorce settlement sat mostly untouched in investment accounts. I didn't need it. My business generated enough income to support my lifestyle and then some. That realization was its own kind of victory. One Tuesday morning, I was reviewing blueprints for a downtown loft conversion when my assistant knocked on my office door. "Naomi, there's a reporter here from Metropolitan Design magazine. She says she has an appointment." I'd forgotten about the interview I'd scheduled 3 weeks ago. "Give me 5 minutes, then send her in." The reporter, Zoe Chin, was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with bright eyes and an enthusiasm that reminded me of my younger self. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she said, pulling out a recorder. "Our readers are fascinated by your story. Woman leaves difficult marriage, starts her own firm, becomes one of the most successful designers in the city within a year. That's inspiring." "It wasn't quite that simple," I said, smiling. "There was a lot of fear and uncertainty in between." We talked for over an hour. I was careful not to mention Brett by name, though Zoe clearly knew who my ex-husband was. Instead, I focused on the business side of things. How I'd built client relationships. How I'd learned to trust my own instincts. How I'd surrounded myself with talented people who shared my vision. "What advice would you give to women who are thinking about leaving unhappy situations but are afraid to start over?" Zoe asked toward the end. I thought about that carefully. I'd tell them that starting over is terrifying. But staying in something that diminishes you is worse. The fear doesn't go away, you just learn to move forward in spite of it. And you discover that you're capable of more than you ever imagined. After Zoe left, I sat at my desk feeling reflective. A year ago, I'd been packing food for a fishing trip, completely unaware that my life was about to implode. Now I was being interviewed about my success story. Life was strange. That afternoon, I had a meeting with a potential client at their penthouse. The elevator opened directly into the apartment, revealing floor-to-ceiling windows with stunning city views. "Miss Cole." A man in his 50s extended his hand. "Richard Morrison. Thanks for coming." We toured the space while he explained his vision. Modern minimalism with warm touches, spaces for entertaining but also intimate corners for quiet. It was a good project, exactly the kind of work I loved. As we discussed timelines and budgets, Richard's wife joined us. She was elegant, probably late 40s, with kind eyes. "I've been following your work," she said. "The Riverside Hotel is stunning. And I admire how you've built your business after." She trailed off diplomatically. "After my divorce, I finished for her." "Thank you. It's been quite a journey." "I imagine so. My sister went through something similar a few years ago. Husband's affair, messy divorce. She's doing well now, but those first few months were brutal." We spent another hour discussing design concepts, and by the time I left, I had a signed contract and a $50,000 deposit. Driving back to the office, I found myself thinking about Brett. I hadn't in a while, but sometimes random things triggered memories. I wondered how he was adjusting to prison life. Whether he regretted his choices or still blamed everyone else for his circumstances. Then I realized I didn't actually care. Whatever he was going through was his own making. And I'd moved so far past that chapter of my life that he felt like a character from a book I'd once read rather than someone I'd been married to. That evening, I met Simone for dinner at a new restaurant downtown. She arrived bursting with news. I got offered a position with a major advertising firm. Creative director position, huge salary, benefits, the whole package. "Simone, that's amazing." I turned it down. I blinked. "You what?" "I turned it down because I'd rather keep working with you. Building something we own together. Taking risks and reaping rewards. I don't want to be someone's employee when I can be a partner in something meaningful." "Are you sure? That's a huge opportunity. So is what we're building." She leaned forward. "Naomi, in less than a year we've created something special. Your design work, my branding, our combined client relationships. Why would I give that up for a corporate job with a ceiling?" I felt tears pricking my eyes. "We should make it official then. Real partners. Equal stake in the business." "Really? Really? I couldn't have done any of this without you. You've been there through everything." We spent dinner hashing out details, scribbling notes on napkins and planning our future. By dessert, we'd outlined a partnership agreement that felt right for both of us. Walking to my car afterward, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not just for Simone but for everything. For Patricia's unwavering support. For Leonard's excellent legal work. For Trevor's thorough investigation. For every client who'd taken a chance on my new company. For every friend who'd stood by me during the divorce. I thought betrayal would destroy me. Instead, it had revealed what I was capable of when I stopped making myself small for someone else's ego. The next week brought more good news. The design magazine feature published with a stunning photo shoot in my office. Orders for consultations tripled. My calendar filled up months in advance. Patricia called after seeing the article. "You look absolutely radiant, dear. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for everything. I wouldn't have gotten through this without you." "Nonsense. You would have found a way. You're stronger than you know." She paused. "I visited Brett last week. I hadn't expected that." "How is he?" "Exactly as you'd expect. Angry, bitter, convinced he's the victim of circumstances beyond his control." She sighed. "I told him that until he takes responsibility for his choices, he'll never move forward." "He didn't want to hear it." "I'm sorry you're dealing with that." "Don't be. He's my son and I love him, but I don't have to enable his delusions. Part of loving someone is holding them accountable." After we hung up, I sat thinking about accountability, about consequences, about how Brett had spent his entire life avoiding both until the universe finally forced his hand. Meanwhile, I'd faced my own accountability. I'd had to confront how I'd allowed myself to become someone I wasn't. How I'd ignored red flags because I wanted to believe my marriage was fine. How I'd made excuses for behavior that shouldn't have been excused. The difference was that I'd learned from it. I'd changed. I'd grown. Brett apparently hadn't. 2 months later, I received an unexpected call from Hugh Bannister. "Naomi, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I wanted you to know that the Investor Restitution Fund is fully established now. Everyone who lost money in Brett's scheme is being repaid, including partial returns on lost earnings." "That's good news." "It is. And I wanted to thank you personally. Your willingness to share what you knew early on helped us build the case quickly. It made a real difference. I'm glad I could help. There's something else." He cleared his throat. "My firm is opening a new headquarters building next year. We're looking for a designer who can create spaces that balance corporate professionalism with creativity. Your name keeps coming up. Are you offering me the project?" "I'm saying we'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss it. If you're interested." I was interested. Very interested. We met the following week, and within a month I'd signed the biggest contract of my career. A multi-million-dollar project that would take at least a year and would solidify Naomi Cole Design as a major player in commercial design. Simone and I celebrated by taking the entire staff out for an expensive dinner. As we sat around the table, laughing and toasting our success, I looked at the team we'd built and felt overwhelmed with pride. These people believed in what we were creating. They joined a company that was less than a year old because they saw potential. And together we were exceeding even our own expectations. "Speech," someone called out, and soon everyone was chanting it. I stood, raising my glass. A year ago I was starting over from nothing. Scared, hurt, uncertain about everything. I could have let that define me. Instead, I decided to build something new. Something mine. But I couldn't have done it alone. I looked around the table. Every person here has contributed to this success. Your talent, your dedication, your belief in what we're building. This isn't my company. It's ours. And I promise you we're just getting started. The toast was enthusiastic, and I sat down feeling like I'd finally found where I belonged. That night, alone in my brownstone, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my back patio. The garden I'd redesigned bloomed with late-season flowers, and string lights created a warm ambience. I thought about the woman I'd been, driving to that lake house with lobster tails and false hope. About the woman I'd become, confident and successful and genuinely happy. The journey between those two versions of myself had been painful, but it had also been necessary. Brett's betrayal had been the catalyst, but my response had been the real transformation. I could have crumbled. Could have let the divorce defeat me. Instead, I'd chosen to rebuild, to grow, to become someone better. And in doing so, I discovered something crucial. I didn't need someone else to complete me or validate my worth. I was enough all by myself. The victory wasn't just financial, though the settlement had been substantial. It wasn't just professional, though my business was booming. The real victory was internal. It was knowing I could face the worst and come out stronger. It was trusting my own instincts. It was refusing to settle for less than I deserved ever again. Brett had given me 6 years of lies. But in destroying those lies, I'd found the truth of who I really was. And that truth was spectacular. 9 months after the divorce, I celebrated my 33rd birthday in Paris. Alone, by choice, fulfilling a promise I'd made to myself months earlier. Brett had never wanted to travel to Europe. Too many business obligations, he'd always said. Too busy, wrong timing, maybe someday. I'd stopped asking eventually, accepting that someday meant never. Now I stood at the top of the Eiffel Tower at sunset, watching the city turn golden below me, and felt absolutely no regret about being here without him. In fact, being alone made it better. No one to rush me, no one to dismiss my excitement, no one to make everything about their schedule. I spent 5 days in Paris sketching architecture, visiting museums, eating incredible food, and remembering what it felt like to simply exist for myself. No business calls, no client meetings, no responsibilities except deciding which arrondissement to explore next. On my last evening, I sat at a cafe near Notre Dame with a notebook full of design inspiration and a heart full of contentment. A text came through from Simone. "How's Paris treating you?" "It's perfect. Exactly what I needed." "Good. Hurry home though. We have 3 new project proposals waiting for you." I smiled. It was nice to be wanted, to have built something that continued thriving even when I stepped away for a bit. The flight home gave me time to think about where I was and where I wanted to go next. Professionally, the business was exceeding projections. We'd need to hire more staff soon to keep up with demand. Personally, I'd started dating again, nothing serious yet, but I was at least open to the possibility. What surprised me most was how little I thought about Brett anymore. He'd been such a central figure in my life for 6 years, and then such a consuming presence during the divorce. Now he was just gone. Not from existence, he was serving his sentence somewhere in the federal system. But gone from my thoughts, my concerns, my life. Sometimes I wondered if I should feel guilty about how completely I'd moved on. But mostly I just felt grateful. Landing back in the city felt like coming home in a way that our brownstone had never felt during my marriage. This was my city now, my space, my territory. I'd built something here that was entirely mine. The office welcomed me back with banners and cake, a surprise party Simone had clearly orchestrated. I was touched by the gesture and the genuine happiness on everyone's faces. "Okay," I said after cutting the cake. "What did I miss?" We spent 2 hours catching up. The Hugh Bannister project was progressing beautifully. 2 new residential clients had signed contracts. And there was interest from a luxury hotel chain about designing their new flagship property. "That last one is huge," Simone said. "Like, make or break the entire trajectory of the company huge. They want to meet next week." I looked at our team, this group of talented people who'd taken a chance on a startup. "Then let's make sure we're ready to impress them." The hotel chain meeting went better than expected. They'd seen the Riverside renovation and wanted something similar for their new downtown location. By the end of the presentation, we had a preliminary agreement and a timeline that would keep us busy for the next 18 months. Walking out of that meeting, I felt like I was floating. This was what success felt like. Not the reflected glory of being married to someone successful, but the earned achievement of building something yourself. That evening, I had dinner with Patricia. She'd aged a bit over the past year, the stress of Brett's situation taking its toll. But she was still sharp and elegant, still the woman who'd stood by me when her own son was the problem. "I'm thinking of selling the family estate," she said over salad. "It's too big for just me and the memories aren't all pleasant." "Where will you go?" "I've been looking at condos downtown. Something modern and manageable. Perhaps you could help me design it." "I'd be honored." We spent dinner discussing her vision for a new home. Clean lines, lots of light, space for her art collection, but not so much space that she felt lost. It was the kind of project I loved, personal and meaningful. As we were leaving, Patricia grabbed my hand. "You know, when Brett first brought you home, I saw something special in you. A brightness, a potential. I watched that dim over the years of your marriage and it broke my heart." "Patricia, let me finish. Watching you now, seeing what you've built, how you've reclaimed yourself, it's been one of the joys of this difficult year. You've become exactly who you were always meant to be." I hugged her tightly, blinking back tears. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Never thank someone for seeing your worth, dear. That's the bare minimum." The next few months flew by in a blur of projects and proposals. The hotel chain contract was officially signed. Patricia's condo design started taking shape. Hugh Bannister's headquarters building broke ground. I hired 4 more staff members, including a project manager who took over the administrative work I'd been doing myself. That freed me up to focus on design, the part of the job I actually loved. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the office working on concept sketches when someone knocked on the door. I looked up to see a man about my age, well-dressed, holding a portfolio. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," he said. "I'm James Crawford. I own the building 2 doors down and I'm renovating it into artist studios. Multiple people recommended your firm. Come in. Tell me about your project." We spent 2 hours discussing his vision. James had been a corporate lawyer who'd quit to pursue his passion for supporting emerging artists. The building renovation was his way of creating affordable studio space in a city where artists were being priced out. His enthusiasm was infectious, and the project aligned with my own values about accessible creativity. By the time he left, I'd agreed to take on the job at a significantly reduced rate. "You're too generous," Simone said when I told her about it later. "Maybe. But some projects are about more than money. They're about legacy and contribution." Spoken like someone who's financially secure enough to be philosophical about it. She was right, and I was grateful for that security. The divorce settlement meant I never had to worry about money again. But more importantly, my business was successful enough to support itself and then some. I could afford to occasionally take on projects because they mattered, not just because they paid well. As fall turned to winter, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in just over a year. I'd gone from a woman who defined herself through her marriage to a successful business owner with her own identity. I'd gone from making excuses for Brett's behavior to holding myself accountable for my own choices. I'd gone from small and scared to confident and capable. The Metropolitan Design magazine feature came out in November with me on the cover. "Design After Divorce: Naomi Cole's Journey from Betrayal to Business Success," read the headline. Inside was a 6-page spread featuring photos of my projects, my office, and a profile that was honest about my struggles without wallowing in victimhood. The response was overwhelming. Emails flooded in from women who'd gone through similar situations. Speaking invitations. More project inquiries than we could possibly handle. I hired a publicist to help manage it all, another sign of how far the business had come. 2 weeks before Christmas, I received an unexpected letter. The return address was a federal correctional institution. Brett. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won out. The letter was handwritten, his familiar neat script covering 3 pages. He apologized for everything. He said prison had given him time to think, to understand how badly he'd treated me. He wished me well and hoped I'd found happiness. There was no request for forgiveness, no plea for me to visit, no manipulation. Just an apology. I read it twice, trying to gauge sincerity. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd care enough to respond. Today wasn't that day. Christmas came and I spent it with Patricia, Simone, and a few friends. We cooked too much food, exchanged thoughtful gifts, and laughed until we cried. It was the best holiday I'd had in years. As midnight approached on New Year's Eve, I stood on my back patio wrapped in a blanket, watching fireworks light up the sky. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and clients wishing me a happy new year. I thought about resolutions, about what I wanted for the coming year. More success for the business, certainly. Maybe a serious relationship if I met the right person. Continued growth and evolution. But mostly, I just wanted more of what I already had. More of this contentment. More of this confidence. More of this sense that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The old Naomi, the one who'd driven to that lake house with lobster tails and false hope, would have made resolutions about fixing things, improving herself to be more acceptable to someone else. The new Naomi knew she didn't need fixing. She just needed to keep being herself and see where that led. As the clock struck midnight and fireworks exploded overhead, I raised my glass to the sky. "To new beginnings," I whispered. "Again and again and again for as long as I need them." Because that was the beautiful thing about life after betrayal. You got to keep beginning again, keep reinventing yourself, keep discovering new possibilities. And I was just getting started. 18 months after the divorce, I woke up in my brownstone on a Saturday morning with absolutely no plans. No client meetings, no project deadlines, no obligations. Just pure, perfect emptiness waiting to be filled however I wanted. I made coffee and sat in my redesigned kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows onto the marble countertops. The house looked nothing like it had during my marriage. I'd renovated every room, removing all traces of Brett's influence and replacing them with my own aesthetic. Bold colors, unexpected textures, spaces that felt alive rather than staged. This house was mine now in every sense. My phone buzzed with a message from James Crawford, the artist studio building owner. "Grand opening party tonight. Please come. You're the guest of honor." I smiled. The studio building had been completed last month, and 20 emerging artists had already moved into affordable spaces. James credited me with making his vision a reality, though I insisted the vision had been his all along. The afternoon was spent getting ready, choosing a red dress that made me feel powerful and elegant. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked different physically, though I was healthier and happier than I'd been in years, but because the energy was completely changed. I looked like someone who knew her worth. The studio building party was packed with artists, supporters, and community members. James greeted me with a hug and immediately dragged me around, introducing me to everyone. "This is Naomi Cole, the designer who made all this possible," he kept saying, as if I'd done something heroic rather than just my job. But watching the artists show off their spaces, seeing their excitement about having affordable studios in the city, I understood why James was so grateful. We'd created something meaningful, something that would impact people's lives and careers. That was the kind of work that mattered. I was talking to a sculptor about her process when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to find a man about my age, casually dressed with warm eyes and an easy smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Thomas Reed. I write for the arts and culture section of the paper. I'd love to interview you about this project sometime." "Of course. Here's my card." We chatted for a few minutes about the building, the design process, the importance of supporting local artists. Thomas was articulate and genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions that went beyond surface level. "Can I be forward?" he asked as our conversation wound down. "I'd love to take you to dinner sometime. Not for the interview, just personally." I hesitated for only a moment. "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers and I felt a flutter of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Interest. The beginning of something new. The following week, I had lunch with Patricia in her newly designed condo. The space had turned out beautifully, modern and sophisticated, with personal touches that reflected her personality. "I love what you've done with it," I said, admiring the gallery wall featuring her art collection. "I love what you've done with yourself," she countered. "You seem lighter these days." "Happier." "I am. Everything's finally settled into place." "Brett's parole hearing is next month," she said carefully. "Did you know?" "Leonard mentioned it. They don't think he'll get parole this early, though." "No, probably not. He'll need to serve at least half his sentence." She set down her teacup. "Have you thought about what you'll do if he's eventually released?" "Nothing. He's not my problem anymore. Whatever life he builds after prison, I hope it's better than the one he destroyed. But I won't be part of it either way." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Good. Some people deserve second chances. But not in your life." That evening, I had my first date with Thomas. Dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, conversation that flowed easily, laughter that felt natural. He told me about his work as a journalist, his passion for covering local arts and culture. I told him about building my business, about the joy of design work that mattered. "You seem really content," he observed over dessert. "Like someone who's figured out what they want." "I have. It took a while, but I got there." "Can I ask about your ex?" "I know who he is, obviously. Everyone does." I appreciated his directness. "What do you want to know?" "Whether you're over it." "Because I'm interested in you, but I'm not interested in being a rebound or a distraction from something unfinished." "I'm completely over it. He's serving a 10-year sentence and honestly I barely think about him anymore. My life now is so far removed from that marriage that it feels like someone else's past." Thomas smiled. "Good. Because I'd really like to see where this goes." Over the next few months, Thomas and I fell into an easy relationship. No rush, no pressure, just two people enjoying each other's company. He came to my office openings and client celebrations. I went to his book readings and journalism award ceremonies. We traveled together, ate amazing meals, talked about everything and nothing. It felt healthy in a way my marriage never had. Equal. Balanced. Two whole people choosing to share their lives rather than one person trying to complete themselves through another. Spring arrived, and with it came a major milestone for Naomi Cole Design. We'd been in business for 2 full years and had completed over 50 projects. Revenue had tripled. Staff had grown to 15 people. We were profitable, established, successful by every metric. Simone and I celebrated by taking the team to a fancy restaurant, the kind of place we couldn't have afforded 2 years ago. Speech. Someone called and I stood with my glass raised. 2 years ago I was starting over from nothing. Scared, uncertain, questioning everything. I could have played it safe. Could have taken a corporate job somewhere. But instead I took a risk on myself. And you all took a risk on me. I looked around at the faces gathered around the table. Every person here has contributed to making Naomi Cole Design what it is. Your talent, your dedication, your belief in what we're building together. This success belongs to all of us. And I promise you we're going to keep pushing boundaries, taking on meaningful projects, and building something we're all proud of. The toast was enthusiastic and I sat down feeling overwhelmed with gratitude and pride. That night, lying in bed with Thomas, I thought about how much my life had changed. 2 years ago I'd been someone's wife. Now I was someone in my own right. A successful business owner. A confident woman. Someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less. "What are you thinking about?" Thomas asked sleepily. "How different everything is now." "Better different?" "So much better." Summer brought news that Brett's parole hearing had been denied. He'd serve at least another 3 years. Part of me felt satisfaction at that, though I tried not to. Revenge wasn't healthy, Leonard had told me. But accountability was important. I didn't dwell on it. Brett was a chapter in my past, not a character in my present. Instead, I focused on what was ahead. A major conference keynote speech about business resilience. A book proposal from a publisher interested in my story. Discussions about opening a second office location to handle our growing client base. Thomas and I moved in together that fall, buying a new place neither of us had history with. We designed it together, his love of vintage pieces mixing with my modern aesthetic to create something uniquely ours. One evening, as we were unpacking boxes in our new home, I found myself thinking about the woman I'd been. The one who'd made herself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. The one who'd ignored red flags and made excuses. "You're quiet," Thomas observed. "Just thinking about how far I've come." "From what?" "From being someone who defined herself through her relationship. Who thought she needed a husband to be complete. Who was so desperate to believe her marriage was fine that she ignored all evidence to the contrary." Thomas set down the box he was holding and pulled me close. "That woman doesn't exist anymore." "No," I agreed. "She doesn't. And I'm grateful for that." As the second anniversary of the divorce approached, I decided to do something symbolic. I sold the engagement ring Brett had given me, the one I'd kept in a drawer not sure what to do with it. The jeweler gave me a fair price, and I immediately donated the money to a women's shelter. Let something good come from that broken promise. Patricia called that evening. "I heard you sold the ring." "How did you?" "Small social circles, dear. I think it's wonderful. That ring represented something that no longer exists. Better to transform it into something helpful." "How are you doing?" I asked. "Really? Well. Adjusted to my new place, enjoying my independence. Brett writes me occasionally from prison. I respond because I'm his mother, but I don't pretend to condone what he did. That must be difficult." "It is what it is. You can love someone and still hold them accountable." I'm learning that lesson late in life, but better late than never. After we hung up, I sat on my couch in the home I shared with Thomas, thinking about accountability and growth and second chances. Brett would eventually get out of prison. He'd have the opportunity to rebuild his life, to become someone better. I hoped he would. Not for my sake, but for his own and for everyone who would interact with him in the future. But whether he did or didn't wasn't my concern anymore. I'd moved so far past that chapter that his story and mine no longer intersected. My story was about building something from ruins. About discovering strength I didn't know I had. About refusing to let betrayal define me or diminish me. And that story was still being written, with chapters yet to come that I could barely imagine. The year ended with a celebratory dinner, just Thomas and me, toasting to another year of growth and possibility. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass. "To the life you've built," Thomas countered. "And to all the adventures still ahead." As midnight approached and another year began, I felt completely at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd learned that perfect wasn't the goal. The goal was authentic. Real. Mine. I'd spent years being someone's wife, playing a role, fitting myself into spaces that weren't designed for me. Now I was finally just Naomi. Designer. Business owner. Partner. Friend. Whole person. And that was more than enough. 3 years after finding Brett at the lake house with Candace, I attended a business awards ceremony. Naomi Cole Design had been nominated for Emerging Business of the Year, competing against companies that had been around much longer. I didn't expect to win. When they called my name, I was so shocked I almost didn't move. Simone had to push me toward the stage. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of business professionals, I felt a surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm me. 3 years ago, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I was starting over from nothing. I just left a marriage that nearly destroyed me. I had no business plan, minimal savings, and more fear than confidence. But I had something else. Determination to build a life that was mine. Not borrowed, not reflected, not dependent on anyone else's success. Mine. I paused, looking at the faces in the audience. This award isn't just for me. It's for every person who's ever had to start over. Who's faced betrayal or loss and chose to rebuild rather than give up. Who's looked at their broken pieces and decided to make something beautiful from them. This is for all of us who refuse to let our worst moments define our futures. The standing ovation surprised me. As I walked off stage with the award, I felt like I'd finally closed the door on that old chapter completely. The woman who'd driven to the lake house with lobster tails was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, more authentically herself than she'd ever been. And the future? The future was whatever I decided to make it. Because that was the greatest gift to come from betrayal. The understanding that I alone controlled my destiny. No one else could make me happy or successful or fulfilled. That was my job, my responsibility, my power. And I was just getting started.